most assuredly has social license, because the moral question of whether we can allow the world to starve or the world to eat is bound up in the question of, do we build a pipeline to Tidewater? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Peace River Westlock will have 3 minutes remaining in his speech when the House resumes debate after question period. Statements by members. Déclaration du député, l'honorable député de la Pointe-de-l'Île.
The honourable member for La Pointe-de-l'Île. Mr. Speaker, with those strong federalist tendencies in Quebec, things really aren't working well. Philippe Couillard wants to reopen the constitutional debate so that Quebecers no longer feel like they've been exiled in their own country. What's the Prime Minister of Canada doing? He's not showing Quebecers any consideration at all. The truth is, Mr. Speaker, the truth is Canada is a prison that prevents Quebec from developing and flourishing. This year, Canada will be celebrating its 150th anniversary. 150 years of a straitjacket on Quebec. With the reopening of the constitutional debate, Quebecers will be reminded that there's nothing to celebrate, there's nothing to gain from remaining in Canada. When you're in a dead end, you back up and you take another road. Canada is a dead end. Quebec has only one road to take, the road of independence.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to recognize the accomplishments of Carolyn Wilson from my riding of London West. Carolyn is a global leader in media literacy and is the chair of the UNESCO-initiated Global Alliance for Partnerships in Media and Information Literacy, or GAPMIL for short. Media and information literacy means that all citizens possess skills to analyze and evaluate the information the media present. GAPMIL was created to enhance research and training on media and information literacy. As a former journalist, I know firsthand how media and information literacy is essential in our communities. It's important we discuss with young Canadians about what we watch, hear, and read. I am proud to acknowledge the work of London's own Carolyn Wilson. Thanks to her leadership, GAPMIL has been at the forefront of this effort on the world stage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Medicine Hat, Cardston Warner.
Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to recognize two exemplary teachers from our riding of Medicine Hat, Cardston Warner, who are recipients of Canada's Teaching Excellence Award. Laura Gale of River Heights Elementary School and Donna Armstrong of Crescent Heights High School. Laura, who teaches kindergarten, takes her class out for hands-on learning trips, uses technology to connect with classrooms globally, and encourages her students' passions. Donna teaches multimedia, design, and communications. Her students have gone on to win numerous design and animation awards, and she's developed a mentoring between grades program as well as provides professional development for teachers in less developed countries. These two amazing teachers, along with all teachers, are helping build Canada's future leaders by providing the skills for youth to excel in tomorrow's economy. On behalf of all residents, students, and parents, congratulations, Laura and Donna, and thank you for your continued excellence and support for our children.
The honourable member for Saint-Léonard Saint-Michel. Mr. Speaker, today I'd like to recognize an anniversary that's of special importance to the 1.5 million Canadians of Italian origin. We celebrate a country, its democratic system, its people, but also each of its regions.
La Basilicata, la Calabria, la Campania, l'Emilia-Romagna, il Friuli, il Lazio, la Liguria, la Lombardia, le Marche, il Molise, il Piemonte, la Puglia, la Sardegna, la Sicilia, la Toscana, il Trentino, l'Umbria, la Valle d'Aosta e il Veneto.
Each of these regions produced sons and daughters who helped build our much-loved Canada. On this first ever Italian Heritage Month in Canada, we wish all Italian Canadians and Italians the world over
Festa della Repubblica Italiana!
The honourable member for Hochelaga. Mr. Speaker, In the early 80s, Ms. Jacinthe Ouellette lost her job at a hospital. She was pregnant and wound up on social assistance. In 1987, the recently opened HoC Resto Pop hired her through a vocational rehabilitation program. After reorganizing every single department in this community organization, she became CEO in 1992. Under her leadership, the HoC Resto Pop became a veritable institution in the neighborhood of Hochelaga Maisonneuve. Not only do they provide affordable meals to the less well-off in my riding, they also work daily so that others like Jacinthe get the training they need to rejoin the workforce. In a few days, Jacinthe Ouellette will be taking a well-deserved retirement. So Jacinthe, after so many years of dedication, support, solidarity, and looking after others, you now deserve some time off for yourself. Happy retirement, and thanks for everything.
Honourable Member for Calgary Skyview.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I immigrated to Canada in 1970. In fact, many of my distinguished colleagues also came to Canada as immigrants or refugees. Unfortunately, we continue to see many who pander and promote misinformation, fear that immigrants and refugees are a drain on Canada, and fail to contribute. The facts simply don't support this divisive and unhealthy point of view. Immigrants across Canada become small business owners, contributing substantially to our nation's economy, to our communities. Calgary Skyview is among the most diverse in Alberta and one of the most entrepreneurial in the city. Let me be clear, Mr. Speaker. Canada's success, our success, are founded on the strengths of many people, many voices, and many points of view. I'm proud of all those that have made a better life for themselves and their families through hard work, contributing to a better Canada for all. I have always believed, Mr. Speaker, in Canada opportunity is limited only by imagination and how hard you are willing to work. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for York Simcoe.
Summer is the time to be in beautiful York Simcoe on the picturesque shores of Lake Simcoe.
Here, here.
The lake is our playground. It is now enjoying its strongest environmental health in generations. Why? Thanks to a decade of investment from the Conservative government's Lake Simcoe Cleanup Fund.
We know why.
The summer fun in York Simcoe starts tomorrow with Mount Albert Sports Day, running June 2nd to 4th. Come for the games, a midway entertainment, and an old country dinner. August 10th to 13th, we'll see thousands taking in the Sutton Fair, a celebration of our community's agricultural history. Horses, cows, and sheep meet demolition derbies and baking competitions in this classic country fair. August 19th, we will gather in Bradford at Carrot Fest. This giant party pays tribute to the Holland Marsh, Canada's Salad Bowl. But the best event of all will be the local MP's old-fashioned Dominion Day pancake breakfast in Sharon on July 1st. Help mark the 150th anniversary of Confederation and give a maple syrup thank you to Sir John A. and the Fathers of Confederation for creating Canada, the best country in the world.
The Honourable Member for St. John's East.
Monsieur le Président, hier soir.
Mr. Speaker, as in keeping with tradition, once again this year, MPs formed a co-ed non-partisan soccer team, the FC Commoners, led by you, to go up against the Pages soccer team.
Who can pass anything in this place. But last night, we proved to them that the MPs can at least deftly pass the ball when we work together across the aisle. With goals from Conservative, NDP, and Liberal MPs, the final score was 4-1, and because there were no injuries this year, I can say that it was an unqualified success. James Ashwell a marqué le but des pages, et nous avons décidé.
James Ashcroft scored the goal for the Pages, and Kathleen Carter and Jonathan Cove and the member for Fredericton were chosen as the 3 stars of the match.
An ethic we all share. And while we MPs may have cheered, turn the page, we have an immense respect for this year's Pages. They will be missed. Vive les pages!
Long live the Pages.
Kathleen. The Member for Brampton East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, 33 years ago, the Sikh community changed forever. In a deliberate attack by the Indian government of the day, the Indian Army stormed the Darbar Sahib complex. On June 1st, 1984, the targeted attack on Sikhism's holiest shrine left a scar in the hearts of Sikhs everywhere. Innocent lives were lost, the Sikh reference library was burnt down, and the Darbar Sahib complex was destroyed. As a proud Canadian and as a proud Sikh, this attack is important to me. This political discussion has always been a sensitive one. But what we cannot lose a fact of is that where so many people met a tragic death is a temple where people from all around the world come to peacefully pray. We have an obligation to continue the fight for justice, for the innocent lives lost in June 1984, and to advocate for truth and reconciliation as the way forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable
Deputy
Member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, cancer affects us all. My father died of throat cancer. My father-in-law Laurent died in December of lung cancer. My aunt is a colon cancer survivor. When fate befalls us, we're blindsided, and the C word strikes fear into all Canadians. On June 17th in Plessisville and many other Canadian cities, the Relay for Life will take place. It's an event to celebrate cancer survivors and to raise funds. In Plessisville, a small town of almost 7,000 people, Serge Bartel's team of volunteers has been working miracles for 11 years. Last year, over $300,000 was raised. The goal is even more ambitious this year, with some 800 people taking turns throughout the night in tribute to loved ones affected by cancer. Our ambassador, Catherine Baudouin, is a fighter, a cancer survivor, and inspiration to us all. I'll be walking on June 17th with my wife, Caroline, my kids, and family for our loved ones. I'd encourage all Canadians to do their part and show cancer we won't give up hope.
Member for St. John Rothsay.
Mr. Speaker, our fight against chronic generational poverty continues in St. John Rothsay, but I'm thrilled to report progress is being made. The Canada Child Benefit is transforming and changing lives of thousands of families from coast to coast to coast. In Budget 2017, money directed towards a national housing strategy, childcare, and early learning projects are historic investments and game changers. Last September, an additional $61 million was invested in New Brunswick for affordable housing. This is having a major impact on the front lines. Premier Brian Gallant came to St. John recently and announced an additional $10 million for Living St. John to directly combat generational poverty. This investment and commitment is unprecedented and will be transformational. I thank the Premier and leaders like Aaron Schreier, Shiloh Boucher, Paulette Hicks, Jack Keir, Donna Gates, Kathy Wright, Monica Chamberlain, Randy Hatfield, and so many others. Together with government focus and support and determination, we will make a difference in the lives of those who need a helping hand. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Yukon.
As we celebrate Tourism Week, I'm happy to report that in the Yukon we have recently seen a growing interest in Northern and Indigenous tourism. In Canada in 2015, Indigenous tourism contributed $1.4 billion to GDP, a huge increase from $596 million in 2002. Our government provided $1 million to the Yukon First Nation Tourism Association, and in Budget 2017, $8.6 million to the Aboriginal Tourism Association of Canada to support the development of Canada's unique and authentic Indigenous tourism industry. This investment is our belief in Indigenous tourism and the opportunity it represents for our country. The trend is wonderful and reflects the many great cultural experiences, whether it be the beautiful cultural centers, Moose Hide, or Adaka or Hakatusi celebration. I wish all territorial and Indigenous tourism operators a great summer season, wish all Canadians happy Tourism Week, and on Canada's 150th, I encourage all Canadians to visit the Yukon and the rest of Canada from coast to coast to coast.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to acknowledge the dedicated men and women of the Canadian Coast Guard who work every day to keep us safe. As summer approaches, Manitobans are taken to the waters of beautiful Lake Winnipeg. Stationed in the harbour at Gimli is Canadian Coast Guard ship Vakta. In Icelandic, Vakta means to watch, guard, and patrol. That is exactly what the crew and team of the Canadian Coast Guard does for the thousands of recreational boaters, freighters, and fishers on Lake Winnipeg, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Every season they conduct dozens of life-saving search and rescue operations. Under Prime Minister Harper, the Conservative government invested more than $550 million in the Canadian Coast Guard, a portion of which was dedicated to ensuring the station at Gimli would be well equipped. On behalf of everyone who loves Lake Winnipeg, I extend a sincere thank you to the men and women of the Canadian Coast Guard, especially those stationed in Gimli. Mr. Speaker, I call on the Liberal government to commit today to ensuring the Gimli Coast Guard Station stays open and is well funded for the safety and security of all who enjoy Lake Winnipeg.
The honourable member for Edmonton Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is an honour today to mark the beginning of Pride Month in Canada. In June and throughout the summer, Canadians will gather in our communities to march in support of equality, inclusion, and LGBTQ2+ rights. Pride flags and trans flags will be raised from coast to coast to coast to declare that in our Canada, we are equal no matter who we love or how we express who we are. Les Canadiens savent que notre pays...
Canadians know our country is made stronger by our diversity. In celebration of our diversity this summer, we'd like to mark the progress our communities have made in the fight against homophobia and transphobia.
About wearing our colors and sharing our true spirit. Our government celebrates this spirit and commits to addressing the work that still needs to be done. As MPs, we are proud to march, proud to advocate, and proud to work every day to ensure that everyone can say, I'm free to be me, je suis libre d'être moi-même.
Here, here. The member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, the Stream to Sea program provides hands-on education for children and teaches them about the importance of our salmon. The Liberal government's decision to cancel this program is a slap in the face to British Columbians. It's also the latest failure of this government to protect and preserve one of Canada's most valuable resources. Salmon is critical to our economy, our food security, our environment, as well as the livelihood and culture of First Nations people. This short-sighted and irresponsible decision comes in the middle of a massive reduction in this year's sockeye run. The sockeye run of the Somas River in my riding is projected to be reduced from 750,000 to 150,000 this year. Wow. The loss of income for the fishers in many communities is nothing short of catastrophic. I'm calling on the government to immediately reinstate the in-school Stream to Sea program and immediately restore salmon enhancement programs that are so critical to the survival of the West Coast wild salmon stock. Why is this government abandoning our salmon?
The honourable member for Milton.
There's a major flap in the art world today, Mr. Speaker. The taxpayer-funded giant rubber duck is a counterfeit. Now, we know that this new Canadian symbol just doesn't measure up to the industrious beaver or the very famous loon. I hope the Minister of Finance isn't promoting it internally as a cheap alternative to new frigates. I also heard that PMO Issues Management thought maybe it would be a great distraction from the Prime Minister's own cardboard cutouts. That is true. But perhaps at the end, the Prime Minister is actually going to be using it as a beach toy on his next visit to Billionaire Island. All joking aside, Mr. Speaker, a serious allegation of intellectual property theft has been made by the original artist. This duck will be coming across the Canadian border, and I certainly hope that the Minister of Public Safety is paying attention to the matter and that he won't try to duck his responsibility.
The honourable member for Ville-Marie, le Sud-Ouest, Île-des-Sœurs.
Gan igere dagawana karata de neganyangehaga nagawanoto. Danu watikinueradu ne ranunqueta. Detsi wenueradu ne songuayadiso. Ne aguego de songuawi negatiscana. I don't want to nyunsege. Wageri waseze agedage negantu aquatarhase neganyangeha. Ayawans chi ayonquayatakenha. Saha ayonguatoro serioste. Ayawans oni chi ezo saa yotgade. Ayogotunde, neganyangeha, negantu, tanusa, nihati, gorahronu, ahontoriwa seseke, ahonste, tauntatarhase, wakwanueradu, ize, sarenus asterista.
Oral questions. Questions orales. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, we know the Prime Minister loves to spend taxpayers' money, including nearly $400 million for his friends at Bombardier. But when he actually has the chance to do some good for Canadian families, the answer is no. Conservatives offered a compassionate response to the challenges faced by families struggling with autism. You know what? It would have cost less per year than the bonus of one Bombardier executive. Why did the Prime Minister reject support for the Canadian Autism Partnership? Why this mean-spirited decision?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to addressing the health needs of Canadians, our government is fully committed to working with our partners, the provinces and territories, and healthcare providers on the front lines. We support the provinces and the territories with an additional $200 billion over the next 5 years. They will largely be responsible for the delivery of healthcare. In addition, we have a whole-of-government response to issues like autism spectrum disorder. That includes working with my partner, the Minister for Persons with Disabilities. It means working with my partner, who's responsible for the Canada Child Benefit, the Canada Disability Credit. We will all work together to address the needs of families affected by autism.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the whole of government response was no to families facing autism challenges. Yesterday, I sat down with Amy Chang. Her parents, John Chang, who is in failing health, and Alison Liu, have been detained in China for 15 months. They are Canadian citizens who require help from their government, and the Chinese community in Canada is very concerned. So far, the Prime Minister has been absent on this file. Is he too busy, or does he just not care? Will he commit to meeting with Amy this week and work to bring her parents home?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Speaker, I share the honourable member's deep concern about this case, and I am following the case of Mr. Chang and Ms. Liu very closely. It has been raised repeatedly at a high level by the government and officials. Our officials are in contact with Mr. Chang, Ms. Liu, and their family, and I will be very glad this afternoon to be meeting with Ms. Chang. I look forward to that conversation.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, every day we learn a new reason not to appoint Ms. Meyer to the position of Official Languages Commissioner. She made donations to the Liberal Party, donations to the Prime Minister's leadership campaign, a private meeting with the Prime Minister's close advisors. And now we're learning that staffers of the Minister of Heritage had previously worked for Ms. Meyer. Only one thing remains to be done. Will they finally cancel the appointment of Ms. Meyer? Honourable Minister of Heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a long process that is merit-based, of course, and we selected Ms. Meyer as the candidate for the position of Official Languages Commissioner. A selection committee made up of a majority of public servants set up this process and studied the different applications, and all measures were in place to ensure that any employees who had contact with Ms. Meyer in the past were excluded from the process.
The Liberals would have us believe that it's just a coincidence that the only choice for a non-partisan officer of Parliament is a Liberal activist, and that it's also just a coincidence that she donated to the Prime Minister's own campaign and discussed an appointment with his closest advisors. And it's just a coincidence that two of her former employees now work for the Heritage Minister. Will the Prime Minister admit that this wasn't just a series of remarkable coincidences, but it was in fact the only reason why she got the job?
Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage.
As I mentioned many times in this House, Mr. President, we are extremely proud of our candidate for Official Languages Commissioner. Why? Because she has the experience and she also has the expertise to make sure that she will be a good Official Languages Commissioner. I'm proud of my team. I've been able to gather great people from across the country that understand the importance of official languages communities. And of course, I explained many times the process, and all the members of my team that have contact in the past with Madame Meyer were not part of the process.
Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this is becoming more and more clear, but to help the government out, the issue isn't Madame Mayor's professional qualifications. What's at question is the Prime Minister's competence, because this appointment process has turned into a fiasco wrapped in a dumpster fire. When will the Prime Minister take responsibility, cancel Madame Mayor's nomination, and launch a new non-partisan process?
Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage.
I'm glad to see that the member is recognizing finally the expertise and the experience of Mrs. Mayor, because this is exactly why we decided to appoint her, because she actually had the knowledge and the experience to really make sure that she would be a good official languages commissioner. And of course, the fact that she served in the past is something that we value, as we did so when we appointed the former Conservative Prime Minister, Kim Campbell, to be heading the nomination process for Supreme Court justices. So that's why we think we have a very good candidate.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Speaker, the Minister of Heritage made a significant claim in this House yesterday. She stated that Jerry Butts and Katie Telford did not discuss the position of Commissioner with Madeleine Mayor. This contradicts Mayor's own testimony at committee. So my question for the Minister is straightforward. Would she like to withdraw or correct her statement, or is she accusing Madame Mayor of intentionally misleading this Parliament?
Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage.
I mentioned that many times. Mrs. Mayor is an amazing candidate because she has the chance to serve 30 years and supporting the promotion and protection of official languages rights in this country. And of course, I would like to precise in the fact that never was there any discussions relating to the fact that she could become the official languages commissioner, and that's why we're very proud of, and we will continue to support Madeleine Mayor to become the next official languages commissioner. Thank you.
Order. The Honourable Member for Outremont.
Duly noted, the Minister has just said that Madeleine Mayor intentionally misled this Parliament. That makes her ineligible to be named to a high office like
The Minister led this process, and she said that it's an independent one, but we've learned that 2 members of the Minister's team previously worked for Ms. Mayor. So I want to give the Minister the chance to give a clear and honest answer, and if she doesn't, then she is the one who will be misleading Parliament. Ready? Has the Minister ever spoken to these 2 members of her team about the nomination of the Official Languages Commissioner? The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud of the process that we put in place, and I'm also proud of the fact that I was able to bring together a very strong team that helped me carry out my responsibilities. There are people who are experienced and who have expertise in official languages. They are people who did have contact with Ms. Mayor. Well, rather, anyone who had contact with Ms. Mayor in the past was not part of the team.
Jerry Butts et Katie Telford ne faisaient pas non.
Jerry Butts and Katie Telford were not officially part of the process either, but they were indeed involved. Will the Minister answer the question? Yes or no? Were her employees contacted in any way by her during the nomination process for Ms. Mayor? Please answer the question. I don't think that the Honourable Member for Outremont wants me to answer the question, but I will give the floor. So I will ask him to direct his comments through the Speaker. The Honourable Minister. First of all, I would acknowledge the fact that the member has often mentioned that Ms. Mayor is a good candidate and that she had a lot of experience and expertise. And I would also like to reassure him that this process was carried out in an open, independent, and merit-based fashion. None of the employees of my team who had contact with Ms. Mayor in the past were involved in that process. That's exactly what happened. Thank you.
Sure.
The Honourable Member for Outremont.
You know what else we found out today, Mr. Speaker? That when Madame Mayer was interested in becoming an Ontario Liberal candidate, she bypassed the standard candidate nomination process. And do you want to know who pulled the strings so that she could be parachuted into a riding? None other than Jerry Butts. Well, no wonder they're such good friends. Does the minister not understand that the more she defends the partisan appointment made by the Prime Minister, the more she loses credibility? Will she do the right thing and recommend that Madame Mayer be now removed from consideration as Commissioner?
The Minister of Canadian Heritage.
So, since Madame Mayer has been such an important person in the protection and promotion of official languages rights in this country, including the protection of the Montfort Hospital and the creation of the Francophone Affairs Commission in Ontario, I wanted to talk about the awards and recognition she has been able to have, including the fact that she received the Order of Merit de la Section Droit Civil of the University of Ottawa, the Bastaracharon Award for the Common Law section of Université de Ottawa, the Officier de la Légion d'honneur.
Order. Colleagues, speakers have long held that speakers cannot comment on the quality of questions or answers, other things said in this House. We simply have the powers entrusted to us by the House, including the enforcement of the rules. So I encourage members to follow the rules and not to interrupt when another member is speaking on whatever side.
The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans, Charlevoix. We've learned that there are very clear links between the Minister of Heritage and the future Commissioner of Official Languages, even when it comes to the members of their inner circle. Former staffers of Ms. Mayer are currently working under the Minister. These employees all worked closely with Madeleine Mayer when she was Ontario's Attorney General and Associate Minister of Francophone Affairs. Will the minister cancel this nomination, or will we have to call for a public inquiry to shed light on this matter? The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage. We're very proud to have found an excellent candidate. We were looking for a candidate to be Official Languages Commissioner, and we wanted to find the best candidate. That's exactly what our process allowed us to do. We had a short list that I received. I had the opportunity to conduct interviews and to see how, in fact, her 30 years of experience and expertise were really shone through. And it was a clear choice, and I'm very glad that she was the candidate selected. The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, Île-d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Do you remember the game show in the 70s in Quebec called Guess Who's Telling the Truth? Well, that's what we've been seeing since May 15th. The minister assures us that Madeleine Mayer never spoke to Mr. Butts or Ms. Telford. And yet, on May 18th, at the Official Languages Committee, Madame Mayer said that she had spoken to Mr. Butts about the positions of Senator and Commissioner, and she had had a coffee with Katie Telford to discuss the same thing. Will she apologize for having misled this House? Once and for all. The Honourable Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased that my colleague is talking about Ms. Mayer, because when I had the opportunity to talk to her about her potential nomination, she mentioned that Madeleine Mayer was a good candidate and that she had a lot of experience and expertise. My other official languages critic in the NDP also acknowledged the same thing. So clearly, Ms. Mayer is a good candidate. The process was followed. The staffers in my office who had worked for her before were not involved in the process, and everything was done according to the rules.
Wellington.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know that Madeleine Mayer met with Jerry Butts and Katie Telford. Why? She told us in committee. Madeleine Mayer confirmed that she met with both of them. But yesterday in the House, the minister said, oh no, that never happened. Was the Minister of Canadian Heritage misleading the House when she said so? It's time for the truth. How many times did Madeleine Mayer meet with members of the PMO before being appointed as the nominee for the Official Languages Commission?
Minister of Canadian Heritage.
As I've said several times, Mr. Speaker,
important awards that Mrs. Maillard was able to gather during her amazing career, including something that the Conservative Party will actually like a lot, the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal in 2012. She even received the Order of College of Social Workers of Ontario in 2009.
Order. This is a good way to shorten question period, colleagues. Order. The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage.
And so I'll just continue. I was saying the Order of Merit of the Association of French-Speaking Jurists of Ontario in 2007. L'Ordre de la Francophonie de Prescott-Russell en 2006.
That was in 2006.
Le Réseau socio-actif des femmes francophones en 2002. Community Builder Award, United Way, 2000.
The Honourable Member for Perth Wellington.
Well, thank
Order.
you, Mr. Speaker. We're not talking about the awards that she received. We're talking about the rewards that she's being given for being nominated for being a Liberal donor. Now, Mr. Speaker, let's talk about her time. Let's talk about Madeleine Mayor's time as an MPP and a Liberal cabinet minister. Her Director of Communications is now the Minister's Director of Communications. The Director of Policy was the former Executive Director to the Kathleen Wynne Liberals. The minister claims she set up a firewall, but I have a sneaking suspicion that firewall is as flimsy as the minister's answers in this House. Will the minister provide evidence that this firewall actually exists, or does it exist at all?
Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage.
Well, I'm glad to see that my colleague recognized that she received many awards, like I was just saying to him. And not only that, actually, Mr. Speaker, the fact that she won so many awards was based on the fact that she had lots of accomplishments in her public life. And that leads to the question of the importance of being able to give importance to public service. And to that extent, I would like to understand the point of view of the Conservative Party. So it's not okay to appoint a person that has served in the past, but it is okay to appoint a former...
The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
If I was a minister, Mr. Speaker, I would have spent the last 24 hours getting my story straight with Madame Mayor, but government's playing fast and loose with the facts when it comes to this appointment. Rules have been broken, and at least one very qualified applicant was completely ignored in favor of a Liberal friend. And yesterday, we heard the contradicting versions of the same event. This is not going to end well, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, why is the minister continuing with this farce of a process, and why is she not shutting it down before she and the Liberals do any more damage to the integrity of this Parliament?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister of Canadian Heritage.
As I was saying, Mr. Speaker, of course, we value the importance of public life, and we value the experience of Mrs. Maillard. And that's what was shown to the fact that we had a very thorough process. Now, since we value the importance of public service, we appointed also the former Conservative Prime Minister, Kim Campbell, to be in charge of a very important process, which was one to appoint Supreme Court justices, the first time that they ought to be bilingual, because we believe in the importance of official languages. So since we're valuing public service, it's just normal that Mrs. Maillard is our candidate.
The Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Well, Mr. Speaker, this so-called open and transparent process is anything but. Key staff members who worked for Madame Mayor at Queen's Park are now working in the office of the Minister of Heritage. And as scary as it sounds, it's as if the Liberals at Queen's Park are a farm club for the bigger in-debt and deficit Liberal club here in Ottawa, managed by Jerry and Katie. Mr. Speaker, will the minister do the right thing and finally admit how many times Madame Mayor met with PMO staff and her staff before they gave their Liberal friend and donor this appointment?
How many times? Minister of Canadian Heritage.
So, since we're we're talking about the importance of her expertise and experience, and because I've already given many explanations regarding the process, I would just like to talk about what has been her participation in association and organizations. So she's been a member of the Association of French-Speaking Jurists of Ontario. She's been Regional District of Ottawa Carleton Health Board. She's been on that. She's been on the Board of Director of the Cité Collégiale. She's been on the board of the Vanier Housing Corporation.
Honourable member for Essex. Order.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals promised to settle softwood lumber dispute last year. But now, with no deal in sight and massive unfair tariffs imposed by the U.S., their failure has already cost Canadian jobs and more are on the line. After 18 months of failing Canadians on this file, finally the Liberals are offering support to struggling workers and communities. And it's still not clear if it will be enough. How quickly will the EI funds be available, and will the minister guarantee that each and every worker who loses their job because of this government's failure will receive support?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the question because it's so timely. Just a few hours ago, the government announced $867 million towards the forest industry in Canada. That is a combination of $605 million in loan guarantees offered through the Export Development Corporation and BDC, looking in the longer term, Mr. Speaker, to make it easier for the industry to diversify, to encourage them to look for export markets. We work, by the way, cooperatively with all of the provinces. This is truly a The
Honourable Member for Jonquière. Mr. Speaker, today we were treated to a big announcement. The government has finally decided to take action on softwood lumber after 18 months. Communities had to mobilize with hundreds of workers and their families flowing into the streets before the government understood the consequences of U.S. countervailing duties on jobs and on local economies. The Prime Minister himself said that he wanted to help the middle class, but he waited for people to lose their jobs before taking action. When will the money be available, and will this money be able to be used to guarantee deposits? Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Much of this investment is available immediately. We have been working for many months, not only across the Government of Canada, but across the entire country. And the suite of measures that we announced today look not only at the short term to ensure that workers and communities and producers are protected from these punitive duties, but also the longer term so that we can sustain such an important industry for all Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Mr. Speaker, the government House Leader loves to throw around the words open and transparent, but make no mistake, the Liberal government is anything but. She throws these words around in the hopes that Canadians will buy what she says and not what they're doing. The Ethics Commissioner is solely responsible to the Parliament of Canada, not to the Liberal Parliament of Canada. Will the Prime Minister agree that as they search for a new ethics commissioner, they won't fall into the same trap they fell into with the official language commissioner and simply recruit from the list of loyal?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, as I have said time and time again, we have put in place a new open, transparent, and merit-based appointment process. All the positions to apply that are available online. If the member has people that he would like to suggest, I encourage them to go to the website and to apply. This is a process brought forward to ensure that all Canadians can apply, because we believe in the diversity of our country. We believe in gender parity, and that's why with this new process we have made over 140 appointments, and they have all been great appointments. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Order. The Honourable Député.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, the position of Ethics Commissioner will soon be vacant. And we don't know if the Liberals have even undertaken a clear and transparent process to replace her. Transferring responsibility for the nomination from the PMO to the office of the government leader is a thinly veiled ploy. Mr. Speaker, can the Prime Minister confirm that the criteria for selecting the next Ethics Commissioner will be the same as for selecting the next Official Languages Commissioner? In other words, being part of the Liberal family and being a generous donor to the party. The Honourable Government House Leader. Mr. Speaker, we have put in place a new, open and transparent and merit-based nomination process. Our goal is to identify highly qualified candidates who respect the principle of gender parity and who really reflect Canadian diversity. As part of this new process, we have made more than 140 nominations. Canadians can continue to apply for these positions. All positions are available online. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, HoC is the Economic Development Agency for Atlantic Canada, and for decades it's been run by nonpartisan senior civil servants. But that's not good enough for this Prime Minister, because his top priority is rewarding his Liberal friends. The latest Liberal to be rewarded, Francis Maguire. Liberal donor, insider, and cheerleader, is now the president of ACOA. Can't the Prime Minister see that this blatant partisan appointment is undermining the credibility of the good work that ACOA does for Atlantic Canadians?
Honourable Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, it is an honour for me to be the Minister responsible for ACOA. And as the member mentioned, ACOA is responsible for helping Atlantic Canada realize its economic potential in innovation, growth, and to be more competitive. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the former President, Paul LeBlanc, for his hard work and his leadership, along with 32 outstanding MPs, for introducing the Atlantic Growth Strategy. And with regards to Francis Maguire, he's a well-respected individual that has extensive experience in both the public and private sector, and I look forward to working with him.
The Honourable Opposition House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Francis Maguire has donated to the Liberal Party a whopping 23 times over the last 10 years for a total of over $30,000. You know what, Mr. Speaker? That's more money than either Jerry, Katie, or the Prime Minister himself have donated to the Liberal Party. Now, Mr. Speaker, we've got patronage at Official Languages and we've got patronage at ACOA, so it begs the question, what's the minimum Liberal donation going to be for the new Ethics Commissioner to even get on their list?
Government House Leader.
This member knows very well that we put in a new process, an open, transparent, merit-based process. With this process, we have appointed over 140 nominations. The work that these people do is important work. We value the public service. We value Canadians wanting to fill these positions. We are looking at diversity. We are looking at our 2 official languages. We are looking at many different factors. All positions to apply are available online. I encourage all Canadians to apply. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Esquimalt Saanich Soup.
Mr. Speaker, we know that torture and summary executions are immoral and run counter to Canadian and international law. They also alienate potential supporters in the fight against ISIS and produce information that is dangerously unreliable. The Minister of Defence knows well the ongoing controversy surrounding possible Canadian complicity in torture involving Afghan detainees. Now that the Minister has decided Canadians should be advising and assisting Iraqi forces in the face of recent evidence of gruesome torture and summary executions, will he now commit to a full investigation of our military cooperation with Iraq?
Parliamentary Secretary. Members know very well that the Department of Defense and the government as a whole do not accept torture. Investigations have been made. They are constantly being done in order to make sure that Canada's reputation is upheld, as well as international regulations. The Honourable Member for Belleux-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, despite the Liberals' promises to set up a system that would correct mistakes in the no-fly list, Canadians are still waiting. Children are still on the list, people have to cancel their trips, and business people are losing opportunities because of that list.
Government waiting for to finally fix the no-fly list, and how long are we going to have to wait before they finally put in place the promised redress system, or is it just going to be another broken promise?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And I want to thank the member and indeed the committee for their work. They've just tabled their recommendations with respect to this item and to the national security framework. We certainly appreciate the frustration of law-abiding travelers whose plans were delayed as a result of false positives. We're absolutely committed on working on the report that was just tabled to us to make sure that we get this right.
The Honourable Member for Pontiac.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, Canada's forestry industry is important for all our communities, whether it be rural or urban. It's a source of good jobs throughout the entire country. Will the Minister of Natural Resources update this House on what the government is doing to help the forestry industry and its workers to get through this difficult time and to come out stronger? The Honourable Minister of Natural Resources. Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank the member for Pontiac for giving me the opportunity to provide an update on the softwood lumber file. We just approved an action plan that includes $860 million to support the softwood lumber industry, its workers, and to diversify access to markets for Canadian wood products.
Lake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, 13 former Royal Canadian Air Force commanders recommended against an interim purchase of Super Hornets. The Senate committee unanimously recommended that the Liberals abandon their plan to buy Super Hornets. But the Liberals refused to listen to the experts. That was until their rich friends at Bombardier had a problem with Boeing. Then the Liberals decided that Boeing was not a trusted partner. Is there at least one Liberal willing to stand up for the interests of Canadians rather than their rich Liberal insiders? The Defence Minister has turned this into a complete disaster. Who's going to clean up his mess?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Mr. Speaker, we know that the Conservatives left us with a fleet that was over 30 years old. They didn't solve the problem. We want to make sure that we can ensure the defense of Canada and North America and stability throughout the world. That means we need to make sure that members of the Canadian Armed Forces are well equipped in order to be able to face all the challenges. The Honourable Member for Charlebourg-Haut-Saint-Charles. I will respond that it's his minister that was the architect of the misfortune affecting the Canadian forces. He thoroughly politicized the CF-18 replacement process, and instead of holding a call for tenders, he created a capacity gap that doesn't exist to make their friends at Boeing happy. And now, 2 years later, Boeing's no longer a trusted partner. The Royal Canadian Air Force still needs aircraft. When is the minister going to stop putting the interests of the Liberal Party before those of the Canadian forces? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. The Minister is putting the interests of all Canadians first and the interests of the Canadian forces to ensure that our armed forces are well equipped, well trained in order to complete their missions and to make sure that Canada is well defended, that Canada can help defend North America and ensure stability without the world with our partners at NATO and NORAD.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Liberal government has finally admitted what we knew all along, that the questionable detention of Canadian citizens John Chang and Allison Liu by China Customs is a trade matter and should have been resolved months ago. Instead, Mr. Chang has been languishing in jail for 15 months, and the Prime Minister has done absolutely nothing to secure his release and safe return. It would take one phone call from the Prime Minister to his new BFFs in Beijing to resolve this. When will the Prime Minister pick up that phone, make the call? It's never too late to do the right thing.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for Consular Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Member for his question. As the Minister earlier stated, our government is very engaged on this file. We have raised this matter at a very high level with the Chinese authorities. Our consular officials are constantly meeting and offering assistance to Mr. Chang, Ms. Liu, and their family. And the Minister and I are meeting with Amy Chang later on this afternoon.
Well, member for Battleford's Lloydminster.
Well, just 15 months late, they finally get around to meeting with Amy, Mr. Speaker. That's just not good enough. Frankly, Canadians deserve and expect a lot better from their government. The member opposite talked about meeting with Amy months ago, but it's actually never really happened. It was all a figment of his imagination. The minister talks about following this file closely. She should be leading this file. She said 3 weeks ago she was seized with this opportunity, but if that means rusted in immobile, she's absolutely right. They've all got the credibility of a big yellow duck, Mr. Speaker. When will the Prime Minister get involved and fix this?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Mr. Speaker, the case of Mr. Chang, Ms. Liu, deserve much more dignity and respect than they're receiving from this opposition member. We are treating this case with great seriousness, and our government has been engaged on this file. I personally spoke with Amy last October. Our office, our door are always open to meet with families of loved ones who are abroad, and we will never stop until we resolve this case, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Drummond. Mr. Speaker, in the last few days, the Liberal track record for official languages isn't great. Partisan appointment to the position of Commissioner of Official Languages Commissioner. 5 French mistakes in the 560 words of the Prime Minister's biography. And today, according to an internal report, French is not doing well in the Federal Public Service. The use of French among upper management is deteriorating. Quality of translations has gone down. English is increasingly dominant, and I could go on. When will we finally see real action to protect official languages in Canada? The Minister of Canadian Heritage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Of course, both official languages are a priority for our government, and that is why we acted quickly when we were elected in order to deal with the inaction of the previous government. We've looked into Francophone immigration. We've set up immigration programs for Francophones. We've set up an appointment process for bilingual judges on the Supreme Court, and we have granted accreditation to the Saint-Jean Military College. Later this year, we know that we can always do better. Bilingualism can always be better.
Saskatoon West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't have to remind this House that all members of Parliament benefit from a safe and secure workplace thanks to the brave men and women who work in the parliamentary security services. In March, and their employer is refusing to bargain collectively. The 220 members that keep us safe have launched a campaign asking for respect to bring their employer to the table to negotiate a fair contract. Will this government show respect for our outstanding security personnel and begin fair negotiations? Thank you.
Order. Members know that questions must be within the responsibility of the government, and this has not to do with the administration of the government if she checks the legislation. L'honorable député de...
The Honourable Member for Portneuf, Jacques Cartier. Mr. Speaker, this government made a big to-do about nothing much. Instead of taking the bull by the horns and concluding an agreement with the United States, they folded over the softwood lumber issue. This government lacks leadership and does not know how to negotiate. It needs to protect the softwood lumber industry and create jobs. The Liberals are abandoning our regions. What workers want, Mr. Speaker, is a signed agreement in order to have a stable and prosperous industry. When will this government sign a new agreement with our main partner, the United States? The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative government let the agreement expire. The tariffs imposed by the American Department are punitive and unfair. We're going before the courts, and we are going to win as we have every other time. The Prime Minister has spoken with the President at the G7 summit about softwood lumber, and I have 2 meetings this week with Secretary Ross, and we are going to discuss softwood lumber. We want a good agreement, not just any agreement.
Prince George.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the reality is they didn't take it seriously in 2015. They didn't get the job done with Obama in 2016, and they're mailing it in right now in 2017. And now we're seeing thousands and thousands of jobs right across Canada being lost. The government's aid package for softwood industry is too little, too late for the forestry workers and their families. Mills are already closing down across the country, and this money won't bring those jobs back. Canadian forestry workers deserve stability and predictability from their government. What does the Minister of Natural Resources have to say to those workers that want jobs, not EI?
Honourable Minister of Natural Resources.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate the question, and I share the honourable member's concern about workers who might be laid off, which is why we are investing $90 million new dollars in helping the transition and in the reskilling of those peoples, at the same time that we're making $605 million available in loan guarantees, and in the long term, more investments in the marketplace, in transition, in the expansion of export markets for the workers. We understand the importance of this industry, and we will protect the workers, the community.
The honourable member for Prince Albert.
Mr. Speaker, this Liberal government failed to secure a new softwood lumber agreement, and now mills are closing down across the country. There was a window of opportunity last year to get a deal done. The Liberals did not make it a priority. In fact, reports suggest that there was a deal on the table and the minister walked away. Thousands of Canadian forestry workers who are about to lose their jobs want to know what was in that deal.
That's right.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, let me remind the honourable member that it was his Conservative government that allowed the previous agreement to expire. As to Ambassador Mike Froman's comments about there having been a deal on the table, let me say there may have been offers from Mike that were great for the United States and punitive for Canada, but I will never do a bad deal for Canada.
The honourable member for Willowdale.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Minister of Democratic Institutions introduced legislation to make political fundraising more open and transparent. All members in this House fully appreciate that Canadians should have a right to access more information about political fundraising events. Could the Minister of Democratic Institutions please update this House on her new efforts to further improve transparency for political fundraising events in Canada? Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable colleague from Willowdale for the question. We are taking concrete action to enhance our already strong and robust rules around political fundraising events in Canada. Yesterday, I was pleased to introduce Bill C-50, which would give Canadians more information than ever before on political fundraising events where a minister, party leader, or leadership contestant is present. Canadians will know who is going to fundraisers, where and when they are happening, and the amount required to attend. I encourage all parties in this place to support these important measures and to take action to become more open and transparent.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, the Minister of Justice has tried to blame everyone other than herself for court delays as serious criminal cases continue to be thrown out of court, a murder case in Montreal being the latest. However, Chief Justice McLaughlin says a big part of the problem are 58 Superior Court vacancies. 58 vacancies that the minister has yet to fill. So when is the minister going to stop making excuses, take responsibility, and get these vacancies filled?
Honourable Minister of Justice.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not making any excuses. I take very seriously my responsibility to appoint Superior Court justices across the country. I'm extremely proud of the very meritorious candidates, 67 in total, that I've appointed thus far. We are going to be moving forward with our open and transparent appointment process to continue to appoint justices to the Superior Court, and I look forward to making an announcement in this regard very shortly.
The
Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, in Yamashish, 2-meter high waves that damage residents' homes is costing thousands of dollars, and someone somewhere is responsible for this event that has nothing to do with an act of God. These individuals are also facing the problems with flooding, and they are hoping they won't be forgotten by this government. The St. Lawrence Seaway pilots assure me that they are cooperating fully with Transport Canada. And can the Minister confirm when the investigation is going to be public and when it will be done? The Honourable Minister of Transportation. Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for his question. Indeed, we are currently studying the report that was produced following an investigation. When the results have been reviewed, we will make them public. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Brossard-Saint-Lambert. Mr. Speaker, the residents of Brossard-Saint-Lambert know that cultural and recreational facilities contribute to stronger communities and improve their quality of life. This government has prioritized cultural and recreational infrastructure as an important part of construction in communities in Quebec and throughout Canada. Can the Minister of Infrastructure and Communities update this House on the work that the government is doing on this important file? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Member for her question. Last week, we were proud to announce $24 million for 26 cultural and recreational projects across Quebec to support seniors, families with children, newcomers, and multicultural communities. We understand that infrastructure investments also help grow the economy, create jobs, and create opportunities for those Canadians who are working hard to be part of the middle class. We will continue to work with the province of Quebec to build even stronger communities going forward. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton-Wetaskiwin.
Mr. Speaker, prior to Budget 2017, nearly half of the Liberal caucus advocated for the Canadian Autism Partnership, and many said so directly to autism stakeholders. Last month on World Autism Awareness Day, more than a dozen Liberal MPs showed up for the photo op. But on Tuesday, in a vote clearly strong-armed by Liberal leadership, all but one Liberal MP voted against the creation of the Canadian Autism Partnership. Why, on something so critically important, after so much work by so many exceptional Canadians, is the Prime Minister playing such a heavy hand?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We recognize that autism spectrum disorder has a significant impact on the individuals and families affected. That's why the government invested nearly $39 million into the Institute of Research. We've also improved benefits for handicapped children, and we invested $8 million in 2015 and 2016 to support autism, and over $5 million into the hospital in Toronto for the Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. We are developing a new law with the Minister for Sport and Persons with Disabilities. The Honourable Member for Pierre Boucher les Patriotes. When the most federally inclined individuals in Quebec recognize that the Constitution is not working, it's really a problem. Quebec's nation exists, and yet nobody wants to hear about it. They even went to refuse Quebec's right to self-government. Will the Prime Minister be democratic enough to recognize that Quebec can decide on its own future? The Honourable Minister of Transportation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Prime Minister clearly indicated this morning, we have no intention of reopening the constitutional debate. Our position has not changed. It was very clear. Our priority is to grow Canada's economy and Quebec's economy, and to create jobs for the middle class and those who want to be part of it. That is the mandate that Quebecers and Canadians gave us, and we take that mandate very seriously. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Joliette. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No respect for Quebec's jurisdiction, as we saw with C-29. No respect for our needs, as we saw with the health transfer. No respect for our territory, as we see with Energy East. And no respect for our laws, as we see with the Infrastructure Bank. No respect for our demands. Nothing, ever. When will this Prime Minister apologize to Quebecers for its total lack of respect for Quebec? The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, we are very proud with this federal government of our relationship with the province of Quebec. We work with the province of Quebec in order to move forward the interests of Quebecers and Canadians. When it comes to health, the environment, and many other files, We are clearly demonstrating that we are working in cooperation and with respect, mutual respect. As I mentioned, Quebecers are happy to know that we are betting on the economy and creation of jobs. I would like to call the attention of the members to the presence of His Excellency Mr. Salifou Diallo, President of the National Assembly of Burkina Faso.
The honourable member.
Point of order.
Mr. Speaker, early in the question period, the government House Leader invited MPs to direct people to the government appointments website to get information about the application for the Ethics Commissioner. I went there in anticipation to find that. I saw that no such application or job was posted there. I'm wondering if she intended to mislead the House, or if in fact she wanted to stand to withdraw her comments, or if she intended to instead direct people to liberal.ca.
This does sound like debate. I don't see remember anyone rising. Honorable député de Belleuil-Chambly.
The honourable member for Belleuil-Chambly. Point of order.
Responsibility, and we humbly respect that, to judge the admissibility of questions. I would, however, if I may, submit to you that I believe, in light of the current situation with the security staff on the Hill and the employer responsibility that is held by the RCMP, which is under the responsibility of the Minister of Public Safety, I would ask that you reconsider the admissibility of the question. I would also ask that the Liberals not heckle me as I talk about the security guards in the House of Commons and the work that they're doing. So, Mr. Speaker, I would humbly submit, while respecting your decision, if you may reconsider it, and if the member for Saskatoon West may be allowed to repose the question. Thank you very much.
Thank the member for Belleuil-Chambly for raising his question. First of all, I thank him and for asking people not to heckle when someone is raising a point of order, or any other